Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. Without ratings and warning labels, knowing which books are appropriate for your children to read is like navigating wild terrain without a map and a compass. I don't know about you, but I have learned more than once handing my child a book that I thought was clean and appropriate for them to read. I'm a fellow mom, educator, reading specialist, and literary enthusiast trying to find great books for my children and yours to read. So if you're looking for a book review from a real mom with a biblical worldview, then welcome and enjoy this week's book review. So this week's book review is The Faithful Spy, a true story about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the plot to kill Hitler by John Hendrix. And as it tells from the title, this is a biography that Bonhoeffer has written, but he tells it in a graphic novel format that's actually more stylistic than traditional graphic novels. So you have graphics, you have symbolism, mainly drawings that are in here, and added details that really add to the overall narrative, and it's definitely going to draw your reader into the story. And it really, one of my favorite parts about this book is the connection to the context that Dietrich Bonhoeffer was operating in. And so that's sort of unique to some other stories, and that he really does a good job of really giving that context. So beyond the visual appeal of the book, like I said, Hendrix does an amazing job communicating the context within that Bonhoeffer was operating in. He occasionally does give an explanation for certain information excluded and included. So that's where the author's note is really important. He's going to give a little bit more about what, today we know a whole lot more than a lot of the people did during the time of World War II. And so Hendrix does a very good job of sort of creating that world. So there are times that he's going to zoom out and let the reader know, like, here's the global context of what is going on, but then he zooms back in and is very specific about what did Bonhoeffer and his colleagues actually know and what were they actually aware of. So I definitely appreciate that. I think it's a fair assessment of the events at the time and the information that the people were working with as they're trying to make decisions. So there's definitely a lot that young readers will learn about World War II and Bonhoeffer in general in this book. So just an example of one of the things in the story that Hendrix does. So he does focus on religion and the way that it was attacked and how it really shifted during that time. Hitler created an official church of Germany and even made himself above God in the church, as he believed that he himself had been ordained and given the right to rule by God. On page 45, Hendrix says, quote, "The downtrodden people of Germany adored this triumphant new version of Christianity. No more did they have to pray for their enemies or turn the other cheek. This new church that Hitler created was strong and full of aggressive values. No longer weak, the church could finally be dominant and pure. It was a church that was pledged to the Führer and then to God in that order." End quote. And so Hendrix does give a little context about what happened in World War I, how that sort of ended, how that influenced different things, and how Hitler came to power. So in that quote, there's a lot of context. And so the reader will get a little bit of that as they're going through. So seeing this shift and change in the church definitely rightfully concerned Bonhoeffer and others. Hitler created what was known as the Aryan Paragraph, and the failure of the church to stand against these discriminatory practices actually led them to accept the paragraph and then begin to wear distinctive Nazi party symbols. On page 51, Hendrix says, quote, "Soon enough, they were even baptizing babies to Hitler instead of God. Some pastors would even end their services not with the Christian doxology, but with Hitler's official salute called the Hitlergruß and a shout of Heil Hitler." End quote. So greatly grieved and concerned, Bonhoeffer began a small group where he taught and led younger pastors to follow the truth of Scripture and to battle against the Hitler regime. Unfortunately, despite his efforts and those of others, quote, "the country was now beginning to reflect the hatred of the Führer," end quote. One aspect of Bonhoeffer's tale that readers will encounter is his internal struggle with what he was supposed to do in the face of such evil. As a Christian and pastoral leader, what was his role? How far could he go? How far should he go? In one instance, he does leave Germany. He's able to make it America before all-out war is declared. However, he is burdened by the cares for his country and the people. So he quickly makes the decision to return to Germany on one of the last ships that are able to take him home. He's now committed to staying in Germany. He and a fellow confidant make a commitment to assassinate Hitler and pray for the Lord's forgiveness. And so in this story, that's a lot of the development is the different plots they had to try to assassinate Hitler. And then you have just their care for the people, their internal struggle about what to do. So if you know anything about Bonhoeffer's story, you know that he does end up being killed, and all is sort of revealed towards the end there. Overall, John Hendrix' book is very visually appealing, especially to readers and families. There's a lot in there to discuss and wrestle with, the role of civil disobedience and faith. So I think that those are great topics to discuss with your family. There's many different things within that, as well as just the historical perspective of World War II and Dietrich's life. So hopefully you have enjoyed this week's book review that gives some information to you as parents, decisions to make. There is no profanity in the book. Again, I would probably peruse just some of the images. I have just a few to kind of share that shows the graphic style on my website at holdingsteadfastreaders.com. So I encourage you to go and check that out. Again, we're talking about World War II, so there is violence. There is some, gruesome things to talk about. So obviously I would assume that maybe if you are not wanting to share that with your children at this time, that they're either probably too young or something like that. But again, hopefully that information is helpful to you, and you will join me next week for another book review.